We now pass the mic and the presentation to our next speaker, Bongo Wisely Tafari, the president of the Caribbean Rastafari organization, who is also a member of the National Reparations Committee of St. Lucia. Let's welcome Bongo Wisely Tafari.
Yes, greetings in the name of His Majesty, Emperor Haile Selassie I and Empress Menen. I'd like to take the opportunity to welcome each and everyone who are here this evening as part of that national consultation organized by the National Reparations Committee. Well, my name is Bongo Wisely Tafari, the president of the Caribbean Rastafari organization, also a member of the Ayanola Council for the Advancement of Rastafari, and also an elder within the Nyabingi tradition in St. Lucia, or Ayanola. I give thanks for the opportunity, but normally in starting I would like to quote one of our illustrious African philosophers, Dr. F.P. Mensah, who said, "Until we rediscover who we are through self-realization, the quest for African liberation and changing the narrative will be a mere Pan-African celebration, public lectures, and mental illusion." We're definitely looking to counteract that. So in an effort to counteract that, self-realization is key. And that is how we would be able to get to know ourselves, to know where we came from, where we are, and where we're moving forward. Give thanks for that quotation. Talking about reparations, whenever people hear of reparations, first thing which comes to mind is money. Boy, how much money you think them people will give you? You think them people will give you all any money? That is always the issue, money. Money has its part within reparations, because the definition for reparation would be the process of repairing, healing, and restoring a people injured because of their group identity and the violation of the fundamental human rights by individuals, governments, corporations, religions, and other institutions. Reparations seek reconciliation between the victims and the beneficiaries, or the perpetrators of the crime, to use another term. It is non-confrontational and conciliatory, meaning reparation is not something where you're looking to fight and create antagonism. It is something where we expect to sit down around a table and discuss the issues of reparations. Because as we say, it is a reconciliatory process for both the victims and the beneficiaries or the perpetrators. Because even today, the beneficiaries or the perpetrators of that crime against humanity, they need healing as well. We as the victims, we need healing also. So both of us need healing so that we could have a peaceful world and live in love and harmony, love and unity. Reparations seeks to restore equality and justice before the law. Equality and justice is something which we all striving to see, that we have equality and justice in whatever we do, because we all were made equal in the eyes of the Almighty. None was higher than the other. But we know because of colonialism, some of us were considered inferior and others were considered superior. That is an injustice. And reparation is there to to bring equality and justice to all. Within reparations, there are two phases, two aspects of reparations. What we would refer to as external reparations, which is the debt owed to our ancestors. Remember when our ancestors were stolen away from Africa and forced to work on the plantation from sunrise to sunset. They never got a cent in terms of salary or payment. Nothing like that was done. You know? So in terms of the external reparation, there is a debt to be paid. So within reparation, there is the money aspect as well. But another aspect of reparation is what we refer to as internal reparations, which is the self-healing aspect. You know, self-healing or self-made repairs. It is a form of repair which we ourselves, as African descendants, can do among ourselves without the intervention of the perpetrators. As black people, with the psychological damage which we went through, the economic damage which we went through, the cultural damage which we suffered, the educational damage which we went through as a people. All of these, we among ourselves, if we put our heads together, we can overcome those differences in terms of self-healing. For example, Rastafari is one who I must say has been on the pathway of self-healing, because we know we were inherited a colonial system where the names given to us were colonial names, and normally your name is supposed to be identifying who you are. So they didn't want us to know where we came from, so they got rid of our African names. We all know the story of Mansa Musa in that thing, I forget the name of the movie, where they beat the youth man, you know, just to say that his name is, they didn't want him to be saying that his name is Mansa Musa in roots. Give thanks. Yeah. Beat him to death, almost to death, to say that the name which he was given by his colonizer, that's the name he's supposed to say. But he knew his name originally was Mansa Musa. You know, so it's the same way within Rastafari. A lot of us have changed our name. In my instance, for example, I was born Bernard Seeley. Now, I didn't change the name wisely by myself, but my brethren, my family, Rastafari family, realized, nah man, no Rasta can't be Seeley. Because in reality, you know, as a schoolboy going to school, in primary school, my teacher used to ridicule me, you know, with that name Seeley. Stop being silly, and why are you acting like a silly boy? Silly boy, and you know, because S-E-A-L-Y, which is my name, but S-I-L-L-Y, which means stupid and foolish. They all pronounce the same. You know, so they were using that to kind of denigrate me. So my family considered, nah man, Rastafari can't be silly. So my name was changed to Wisely Tafari. And so I carry the name Bongo Wisely Tafari today. All of that is part of returning to my identity as an African descendant. Because the name Seeley was some colonial master who had big business. So my parents took on the name Seeley and then passed it on to us. You know, so in the process of healing myself, the name had to be changed. And it's so with a lot of the item need to go within the item themselves, as it says, to get to know yourself through self-realization. Then you will realize that the name you've been given does not really identify who you really are. even the names of different things, the way we do things, the way we organize ourselves as a people, the religion that we practice today is something that was enforced upon us. Our African spirituality was beaten out of us, and religion was forced upon us. You know, so in getting to know ourselves as part of our reparations, the internal reparations, we must make those changes moving forward. Within our ancestors, during the time of slavery, when slavery was coming to an end and the Emancipation Act was tabled in 1834, the cry from our ancestors at the time was, no reparation, no emancipation. And the reason that cry came about was because the Africans realized that with the so-called Emancipation Act, the slave master was paid, whereas our ancestors who worked from sunrise to sunset never received a cent. So hence they came up with the thing, no reparation, no emancipation, because the whole emancipation thing was like a compromise to benefit the slave masters and not necessarily the Africans. So even today when we celebrate emancipation, a lot of people still a bit confused as to what really emancipation is all about. People are even asking the question, what are we celebrating emancipation for? Because we have not yet received reparations. We are still hurt. We are still injured. You know, we are still in bondage mentally, psychologically, spiritually. You know, though we claim, yes, we are independent country. You know, but then in the whole process of healing ourselves, we have to go through that process of acknowledging who we are, where we came from, and where we heading. So all of that is part of the whole process of reparations. So as I say, it's not only the money side of it, but monies have a part to play, because as I say, our ancestors worked from sunrise to sunset and they were never paid. And if a man, a fair day's work to a fair day's pay, we always hear that saying. So why wasn't our ancestors given a fair day's pay? One of the reasons is because the colonializers considered them not to be human beings. So they don't deserve payment according to the colonizers. You know, so that is why the cry for reparations is still alive today. And it is our responsibility as descendants of the African people who are brutalized. We must keep that cry alive. Because there is a saying in Africa, we and our ancestors are one. We are our ancestors are us. So if the cry for reparations was active from 1834, and up to a day like today, we have not yet received it, the Right Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey took up the cry. His Back to Africa movement. Again, Marcus Garvey was ignored. He was even jailed in America for fraud and so on. He died almost lonely, you know, because they considered the ideas he was pushing, it was not in sync with the colonizers. So they just ignore him. And that is what is happening today with the reparations campaign. In 2013, the CARICOM governments decide to entertain reparations, embrace the idea of reparations. And they set up the CARICOM Reparations Commission. And the commission was then mandated in every territory to establish what we call the National Reparations Committee. 10 years today, we are celebrating our 10th anniversary today. And up to a day like today, none of the National Reparation Committees have been allocated budgetary, they've never given any budgetary allocations to carry on the works of the National Reparations Committee. So people must be wondering, how can that go anywhere? Because reparations entails education. Because remember, our education was beaten out and we were enforced with colonial education. So in terms of reparations, a lot of the students today, when you ask them about reparation, what is that all about? So long that happened, I thought you all had forget about that already. That is their response, because they are not aware of the history of reparations. They are not aware of their own history as African descendants. You know? So it's all these things the reparation campaign is there to address. Because the Reparations Committee in St. Lucia, it is our duty to educate the masses. Because reparation is not something for the government or for them bourgeois or big-time people. Reparation is for the grassroots people. These were the people who suffered on the plantation. So today, to get them interested, we must educate them. And the Reparations Committee need to be facilitated by the governments to be able to go into the schools, go into the communities, and so on, and educate the masses. It's then now the masses will be able to identify with the subject of reparations. You know, so these are the challenges, you know, which the Reparations Committee has been enduring over the years. But we as African descendants, it is within our DNA, we will never give up the fight. We will never get weary. Although our own colleagues try to ridicule us and tell us all manner of things to try and discourage us, but we remain confident in the victory of good over evil. And we know that slavery was an evilous act. Reparation is a righteous act. So we remain confident that the victory for reparations is assured. And it's by our confidence we are here today continuing, and would like to see more, especially the younger generation, the students, because one of the issues again in our schools, history is not being taught as a subject. You know, so a lot of the students don't know their history, where they came from, you know. Now the reparations thing is not just only to say, well, just a Rasta thing or just some people who clamoring for that. In 2001, the United Nations organized the World Conference Against Racism that took place in Durban, South Africa, where all leaders of the world were present, most countries were present. And one of the outcomes, the findings of that conference was that transatlantic slave trade, chattel slavery, native genocide, and the continuing colonialism, these are crimes against humanity. And the fact that they are crimes against humanity, there is need for redress. Within that same conference, a plan of action came through. And in terms of the redress, it states that African countries need to provide the welcome return for us in the diaspora. And added to the welcome return there must be facilitation of settlements. We need to be settled on the African continent. That is those of us who desire to return. Because it's not everybody who wants to repatriate. But those who have that mindset should never be denied, because it is their right to return to their ancestral homeland. So as a result of the need for that establishment of settlements in Africa, the Caribbean Rastafari organization has come up with what we refer to as our flagship for reparations. And that is, we have established what is known as the RSAP project, RSAP, Reparation for Settlement in Africa project. For those of you who may need more information about that, we've established a website, www.reparationforsettlement.net, where if you go there, you will get more information as to the whole initiative and how we can interact. Because what we are trying to get is get information from people who are interested in reparations, what area they would like to go to, what resources they are bringing. Because in the diaspora, we've gone to school, we've gone to universities, some of us have become successful business entrepreneurs, and so on. So those businesses need to be transferred over to the continent. So the RSAP project, what it is looking to do is to utilize the proceeds from reparations to help establish those settlements in the African countries that are willing to receive us as returning citizens. Because we've seen a number of people get a ticket, buy a ticket, and they go Africa and says repatriation. When they reach Africa, they are treated as visitors, as foreigners. That's not repatriation. Because for repatriation, there must be the welcome return. Because if I today just take a ticket and go to any part of Africa, I will be treated as a tourist or somebody coming just to visit. So repatriation is an issue which deals with government to government, meaning the governments of CARICOM have to be in dialogue with the governments of the African Union to facilitate reparations and repatriation. You know? The CARICOM governments have come up with a 10-point plan for reparatory justice. And the first one is an official apology. Now we may ask, why an official apology? An official apology is vital because offering an apology, it means that you've acknowledged that you've done something wrong and there's need for repairs. There's need for healing. There's need for redress. Today, Britain, for example, and even France, the two people who colonized St. Lucia, because we keep boasting 7 times British, 7 times French. You know, as though it's an honor for us. You know, we were 7 times British, 7 times French. Not realizing that it was exploitation by both the British and the French. What took place in St. Lucia. You know? So with the whole need for the settlement in Africa, because to leave the diaspora and to go to Africa, you need transportation, whether it's by air or by sea. You know, so the proceeds of reparations would facilitate those. We need to establish settlements in the countries where we go in. And that is where the government on the African country have to facilitate in terms of providing land, infrastructural development. Because if the little work we've done in the West, we should not be using that to pay ticket, to buy a ticket, and then when we reach Africa, go look to buy land and to do this and to do that again. No. There are people who can afford it. But in the true sense of reparation and repatriation, it has to be a government-to-government initiative. And that is why we are calling upon the CARICOM governments, because the ALSAP project, we've presented it to the CARICOM Reparations Commission so that they could look at it and see how they could facilitate us. Again, the ALSAP project is not only for Rastafari ones, it is for all who are beneficiaries of reparations, meaning all African descendants. Now, reparations, as I said, there's a 10-point plan. For those who are not interested in repatriation, there are other programs, indigenous cultural programs, debt repayment, psychological repayment, psychological repairs. You know, all of these things are essential to make us whole again, because we were brutalized and beaten down. You know, they considered we were what? 3/5 of a human being. So to regain that 2 other portions, reparation is important. It's a must, so that we could be seen as wholesome people again, in the true sense of the word. As I said earlier on, the Almighty created all of us equal. But colonialism is what made that difference. And that is here what we are here today, to educate the masses, to decolonize our minds. When our countries got independence, one of the main issues of independence supposed to be self-determination, where we're supposed to be able to determine our future for ourselves. But today, a lot of our governments who claim to be independent are still subject to the very same colonizers who colonized us, and depending on them for little grants and so on. Whereas if at the time of independence, our leaders had the opportunity to demand reparations, but they kept silent, and they accepted little gifts from the colonizers, which was pittance when it comes to developing a nation. Because remember, you know, the literacy levels in most of those Caribbean countries prior to independence was very high. So the leaders had to go through that process of educating the masses on their own, with very little assistance from the colonizers. You know? So within the whole process of reparation, within the ALSAP, what we are doing is to create a financial institution to manage access to capital for settlers towards business financing. Because as we say, some of us are business people down here and would like to transfer our business over onto the mainland. So there is need for financial institutions, whether it be credit union, banks or whatever, to help those business people who are moving across with their business. So all of these things, the ALSAP project is looking into establishing all of these. The settlement of African diaspora individuals from families within specific nations. Also, it is looking to establish the settlement of both individuals as well as families who have that desire to return. And all of these things call for finance. You know? So, hence the need, the money side of the reparations. It's not money that will go in our pocket or in Daman's pocket where people are asking, boy, how much I get in, how much I get in. We need to come up with ideas, developmental programs. Because even those who do not want to be repatriated, say for example in St. Lucia, people who will be remaining here, there's need for reparations for them also. Our health situation is very critical. St. Lucia is very high in terms of diabetes and hypertension and so on. And all of these sicknesses are the legacies of slavery on the plantation when they overworked our ancestors, never gave them any treatment, any proper rest as such. And the medication which is being recommended for us today, those things were worked on Europeans. So within the European people, they may get up to 80% efficacy of those medications. But when it comes to us, it barely reaches 50%. And the reason for that is because what we went through on the plantation has changed our DNA. You know, so the people in Europe, when you do a test on them, and the people in the diaspora, and you do a test on them, you'll see the big difference between the two. You know, so it's all those issues would like to be addressed in terms of reparation. So the people in St. Lucia, funds can be used where they could carry out research on our own people to come up with the proper medication for them, as against depending on the medication from overseas or wherever. You know, so all of these things, reparation addresses. Also, we want to take the opportunity, you know, to let ones and ones know, you know, that in terms of reparation, there is debt repayment. Our countries, our countries today are laden with debt. And the debt are to the very same colonizers. The same people who, when they gave us independence, they left us with high levels of illiteracy. Our health situation was in shambles. So we had to find ways and means to treat those people. And by doing that, they had to take loan from those very same colonizers. So debt repayment would help our governments be able to deal with certain crucial issues which are very important. You know, and we won't be worrying about how much debt we have. Sometimes our governments cannot go into no social program because they are so laden with debt. You know, so they need to try and clear off those debt first. So as part of the reparatory justice, those debts, the European countries need to get rid of those debts so that we could get a clean slate to really do what we're supposed to do. So brothers and sisters, again, I give thanks for the opportunity to come here to share with the IDEM our perspective on reparations. As we say, education is the key. And it is our intention within the National Reparations Committee to continue the educational program in spite of the fact that we have not received any budgetary allocation. It is within our hearts, and we will continue to volunteer those services to our people, because we need the people on board to make reparation a success. Give thanks, Rastafari. In terms of the sustainability of the reparations campaign, as we say, it started from 1834. Our ancestors were clamoring for repatriation as well as reparations, because they said no reparation, no emancipation. Now, reparation is not an event. It is a process which takes time. As we say, education is very important. And we need to be educated so that we could be able to appreciate the need for reparations. Because as we say, some people just feel, boy, it's a money to come in my pocket and this and that. And no, reparation is a healing process. As we say, it is not something which is confrontational, it is reconciliatory. Now, up to today, most of the perpetrators are still in denial. John former Prime Minister of England came to Jamaica recently and said, man, it's time we forget about this reparation and time to move on. You know? So there will be resistance. So it's not an overnight thing. You know, because even I am of the view that the CARICOM heads decide to entertain reparations when they realize the Mau Mau in Kenya did receive reparations from England. Now, the reparations which the Mau Mau received is totally different to the reparations for chattel slavery. It is a much longer process. The Mau Mau situation, you know, the documents are still available. Now a lot of those documents are in British museums, in European museums. We do not have access to those information. Our children do not have access to those information. So hence the reason why some of them are even as well negligent in terms of entertaining reparations. You know, so it will take time, and that is where the education comes in. And also, you know, our governments have a role to play. Because when we thought we were decolonizing ourselves with independence, what we saw happening is that our leaders have made themselves comfortable in a zone where we would call neo-colonialism. So when we feel as though progress is being made, it's like one step forward, two steps backward under neo-colonialism. So we have to derail colonialism totally to be able to realize ourselves as African people and to be able to appreciate the process of reparations. You know, so in terms of the sustainability, today we can see that a lot of strides have been made. As Brother Earl said, a figure now can come on the table and say, well, that is what it's worth. Now again, the reparation have to come in developmental programs. It's not money going in this one pocket. We see reparations in America and those places where people get money individually. But with the chattel slavery issue, it's a totally different scenario. You know, so we can't compare the two. We may see, yes, well, the Jews got reparation, the Mau Mau get reparation, but then for chattel slavery, it will take a much longer period, and that is where resilience and determination on our part is important. And for that to happen, we must totally eradicate colonialism. We need to decolonize our mind so that we could think properly and then move forward as what we would say as wholesome people to be able to claim our reparations. The other issue, what was the last issue again, please? I kind of slipped me. Right, the readiness of the continent. Presently, we know colonialism damaged, the same damage which was done to us in the diaspora has been done to Africa as well. But presently, we see that Africa is awakening. The Francophone countries, we can see right now they're standing up for their rights. So that is a campaign which we in the Caribbean need to embrace and follow suit to totally decolonize our system. You know, so there are countries that are willing to receive us as returning citizens. And these are the countries we will be dealing with, first and foremost. There are others who are still, as we say, neo-colonialists. So they will not entertain that kind of a subject. You know, so we have to be strategic in the way we deal with this situation. Yes, there are countries which have already made land allocations available. Tanzania, South Africa, Ethiopia, Ghana, These countries have made land available for those from the West. But then a lot of us from the West, we do have to pay our own ticket to go over. We should not. Some of us have done it, but we should not. It should be part of the whole package of reparatory justice. You know, so that is why it will appear as though it is dragging, it will take time, but patience is virtue. Because as I said, from 1834, that was the cry of our ancestors, and today we are still here, 2023. Now, we who are presently engaged in that campaign, we may not be the ones to enjoy the benefit of the victory. It may be our children, but we have to make sure that we keep it alive so that they coming could benefit. Give thanks.